What's good, y'all? It's your boy Ross back at it again with another video. So I'm going to check out rarest matches, stipulations that hardly happen. There have been a plethora of different type of matches, different style of matches, and some of them have worked and have become iconic, like the Hell in a Cell. That's become an iconic type of match, a feud ending match with what it was originally supposed to be, and then it kind of got diluted, but I think they're bringing it back now. A feud ending match, something that you knew was going to be brutal and intense. And then there's been other matches where you're just like, okay, what is this? Like the Punjabi prison match. I think that's how you pronounce it. The match synonymous with the Great Khali. It looked cool, like just the structure being created, but then in practicality, it seemed like there was a lot going on, and it didn't really stick. So we're going to check out some of these crazy, rare matches that, you know, you don't really see too often. Appreciate all the love and support. Let's get right into this one, man.
A lot of different match types have been introduced, some wackier than others. Yes, for every standard one-on-one bout or even steel cage match, there's one of the match types we're going to be looking at today, matches we rarely see anymore. And where better to start than with one of the all-time great stipulations, the Buried Alive match.
Yeah.
Yes, the gimmick here is that there's an open grave set up at the entrance ramp, and that in order to win the bout, you have to take your opponent down there and quite literally bury him under 6 feet of dirt.
That's, when you really break it down, that's a crazy premise for a damn wrestling match. You essentially have to kill them. Wrestling is just a weird, like, spot of entertainment mixed with physical combat. Because as a kid growing up, you're like, oh man, he's about to get buried alive, and then he'll somehow find a way to be back on the show a couple weeks later. But when you really think about it, we're watching someone beat someone up so bad that they throw them into a grave and they legitimately bury them, essentially murdering them. Gotta love it, bro. Gotta love it, man.
Unsurprisingly then, this was a match created specifically for The Undertaker during his feud with Mankind back in 1996, and it's a match which has almost exclusively been used by the Dead Man in the years following. That said, it hasn't been seen a lot in recent decades, probably on account of WWE going PG during the late 2000s, and this no longer being something they wanted to present to advertisers. And with WWE still being an advertiser-friendly product today, it means you're unlikely to see much of it in the future.
Yeah.
But then with The Undertaker having since retired, it's not like there's much storyline call for it anyway. So for that reason, we imagine the Buried Alive match is pretty much a dead gimmick at this point, ironically enough. And instead of seeing new incarnations of it, we'll have to be content with going back and watching the old showdowns it's given us. Showdowns like the time Steve Austin took part in one at Rock Bottom in December of 1998, or the time Vince McMahon himself got involved by beating the Phenom at Survivor Series in November of 2003. But of course, this isn't the only rare match type strongly associated with The Undertaker. No, if we move on to our next entry, we'll find another one that the Dead Man is credited with introducing the world to back in 1992. That's right.
Yep.
It's time for us to talk about the casket match. Now, like with the Buried Alive match, the rules to a casket match are pretty simple, though not anywhere near as deadly in kayfabe. That's right. In place of an open grave located at the mouth of the entrance ramp, there's a casket placed at ringside. And if you want to win this bout, then you have to beat your opponent down to the point that you can put him inside of his casket and then close the lid shut. Who was the first victim of this gimmick? Well, that would be Kamala, as it was at Survivor Series 1992, 2 years after the Phenom's debut, that he took the advantage of the Ugandan Giant's apparent fear of enclosed spaces by placing him inside one. Yes, this was the origin of the idea, with it being a way to play mind games with the Dead Man's chief rival at the time. But that would be far from the only time the casket match made an appearance on WWE TV, as in the years which followed, it became a bit of a staple for The Undertaker. And when he wasn't using it, the idea was migrating over to other companies too. Companies like WCW, TNA, and even Lucha Underground, with it being something which perfectly fit into the telenovela world of that latter promotion. That said, with 2 out of 3 of those companies dead today, and with Mark Calloway no longer an active performer, it means there's not a lot of casket.
There's a lot of caskets when you think about it. It's just the WWE over the years has ordered a plethora of caskets.
matches taking place in the 2020s. Hell, you'd be lucky if you see one every couple of years, and that makes it a rarity in the wrestling world as far as we're concerned. But then, given the type of bout it is, it really should be a rare one, as it should be saved for special occasions whenever a storyline calls for it to take place. The worst thing you could do to something like this, after all, would be to have it appear on multiple shows every year and take away its specialness, as then it just turns into something which fans become too familiar with. But let's move over to our next entry, a match which, rather than being most commonly associated with The Undertaker, was created by a king and a cowboy instead. The empty arena match. Yes, we're going back to Memphis in 1981 for this one, as that was where the first known example of an empty arena match happened. What was the story here? Well, it was that Terry Funk had come to believe that all Jerry Lawler cared about was the adoration of fans, so he wanted to take this away from him by fighting him inside the Mid-South Coliseum on June 4th of that year in front of absolutely no one. With that being a challenge, the king ultimately accepted. What followed on from there then was one of the most unique bouts anyone had ever seen at the time. So unique, in fact, no one would even try to replicate it for years thereafter. No, it wasn't until 1999 that there was another notable example of someone trying it again, this time in WWF when they had The Rock and Mankind do battle over the world title inside of an empty arena on Halftime Heat. Would this match be as great as the original? That depends on who you ask. And it introduced a whole new generation to the concept. Still though, it wasn't like the idea was used regularly following this. No, even now in 2025, it's rarely seen. Sure, there was the Thunderdome era where technically all wrestling was taking place in front of empty arenas, but we're not going to count that here, as this was more of a result of outside circumstances than anything else, not a result of a kayfabe decision made by the performers in the ring. Now, if you want to see a true empty arena bout take place again, you're going to have to wait until the storyline dictates it. So with that in mind, let's move away from this one for now and over to our next rare.
And that is actually a pretty interesting concept, to just brawl in front of no fans, just all over the place, just chaos, but there's no one there. That is a interesting concept that they did come up with, way back in the day. And I didn't even know that's how the original empty arena match even started. So I actually learned something today. It's actually pretty cool to kind of learn how some of these matches got their first start up. So.
Seen match type, the one which is so rare it was only ever seen once, the hog pen match.
Whoa.
What was the hog pen match? Well, it was something created in mid-90s WWF when Vince McMahon was throwing everything he could at the wall, all in the hopes that something would stick. And that led to him coming up with the idea of putting Greenwich snob Hunter Hearst Helmsley into a feud with kayfabe pig farmer Henry O. Godwin. But this was not just any feud. No, it was one where the blow-off match between the pair at In Your House 5 Seasons Beatings was going to take place under unique rules, as they would meet in a showdown where the rules dictated a hog pen would be located at ringside. Well, how do you win then? Well, you simply had to throw your opponent into the hog pen, and from there watch them flail about in the slop as pigs roamed around them. Yes, it was a bizarre one to say the least, and one which, if truth be told, appears to have been part of Triple H's punishment for the infamous curtain call incident he took part in a few months prior. Come on now, the whole thing was clearly designed for that final shot of Paul Levesque covered in mud and pig crap, looking like a fool for the audience in attendance. Needless to say then, this stipulation wasn't used a lot. In fact, it only happened one more time, when Vicky Guerrero took on Santina Marella at Extreme Rules of 2009. And ever since then, the hog pen match would be shelved, so we'll just have to wait and see if it ever makes a return. So let's move away from that one for now then, and over to our next entry instead, another match type which was created for one person specifically.
And that's crazy that Vince came up with this, well, not came up with this, but essentially it was there to punish Triple H even more. That's kind of wild. That's actually kind of wild. We're gonna punish you, bro. It's okay, man. It's okay. You'll be fine.
And that pretty much died out once the performer's in-ring career came to an end. The specialty bout of the Great Khali, the Punjabi prison match.
Yep.
Of course, technically the Punjabi prison match is really a variation on an already existing bout, the steel cage match. Yes, one of the earliest gimmicks in wrestling, steel cages have long been popular with fans, initially as a feud-ending showdown designed to ensure that no one other than the two participants involved got in or out of the ring. But as the years have gone on and steel cages have become more normalized, there have been multiple different variations introduced, variations like War Games, Hell in a Cell, and the Punjabi prison. That said, while War Games and Hell in a Cell remain popular today, the same cannot be said for the third type we mentioned here. And the reason for that is, at least in part, because rather than the two cages involved here being made out of steel, they were made out of thick bamboo canes, or at least in kayfabe they were. In reality, though, they were also made of steel and only painted to look like bamboo.
Yep.
Regardless, though, the thickness of the rods that created the structure presented a problem for cameramen trying to film the thing, as it did for fans in attendance trying to watch, as it became nigh on impossible for anyone to see what was happening in the ring.
And that was always the visual drawback. Like, it looked cool, like, oh, this looks kind of insane. But then when you really try to actually enjoy the match, it's hard because it's not like a steel cage, where the steel cage, obviously, other than the main brackets, everything else is, it's you're able to see. It's a little bit more transparent. These poles and the wiring and stuff are so thick that it covers up a lot of the visual space. So it just looks like a maze of bamboo chaos. You can't really tell what's happening too much in the ring. Like, it just, from an aesthetic point, it's hard to see as a fan watching it. So, but it still looks kind of cool. It looks crazy, but just trying to watch the match itself becomes damn near impossible.
But that wasn't the only thing which cursed the Punjabi prison match right out of the gate. No, there was also the fact that the Great Khali wasn't even able to appear in the original one. And this is because he'd been pulled from the card of the Great American Bash 2006 at the last minute on account of a wellness test failure. So as a result of him being unavailable, his planned opponent for the night, The Undertaker, would have to challenge The Big Show instead. As you can expect then, what followed was not good, and this meant WWE were even less inclined to try the gimmick again in years following. Hell, ever since that point, there have only been 2 examples of Punjabi prison matches in WWE, and no other company has even attempted to tackle it, as it just seems like more of a headache than it's worth.
Yeah.
No, the chances are we've all seen the last of this gimmick now, unless the Great Khali comes out of retirement one more time, that is. Outside of that, though, there really is no reason for it to happen again. One rare match type we could see a reintroduction of at some point down the line, though, would be our next entry, a match which was fittingly first created during the wild and violent days of the Attitude Era. What match type are we talking about here? Why, the First Blood match, of course. Travel back to 1998 with us, if you will. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the WWF champion, and his current challenger of the month was none other than the Big Red Machine Kane. But while this was a difficult enough mountain for the Rattlesnake to climb, things would be made all the harder once he realized that his showdown against the heel at King of the Ring in June of that year was going to be under First Blood rules. What were First Blood rules? It was simple. The first person to bleed lost. And given Kane was nearly covered from head to toe by his ring gear, this put the champion at an incredible disadvantage. So when he lost then, it shouldn't have come as a huge surprise, and it also shouldn't have come as a huge surprise that in the blood-soaked time which was the turn of the millennium, the First Blood match would make multiple more appearances on TV in the years which followed, perhaps most prominently during the end of an era bout between Stone Cold and The Undertaker at Fully Loaded the following year.
That
said,
as
WWE went in more of a PG route toward the late 2000s, banning blood from their screens in the process, it meant that the First Blood match would become a thing of the past. Could it be brought back again today? Sure, though it's unlikely this would happen in WWE, as while their ban on bleeding in matches has been softened somewhat in recent years, it's still not something they tend to allow for the most part.
But I don't know if I would, I don't know. Maybe if they do the Bad Blood pay-per-view again, maybe we would see it again. I don't know if it's going to happen, but there is a possibility. They've done the Hell in a Cell, and they let them use, like, copious amounts of blood. So I'm willing to bet if they do the Bad Blood pay-per-view again, or PLE again, I can see them, possibly doing that.
Let's move away from First Blood matches for now and instead move to another largely forgotten match type, one which also deserves a comeback of its own, the 3 Stages of Hell match. Sure, like with the Punjabi prison match being a classic one too. Steel cage bout, you could argue that the 3 Stages of Hell match is little more than a variation of a 2 out of 3 falls encounter, and that this is still a gimmick we see plenty of today. But what separates the two is that while the latter is generally just 3 straight falls of standard wrestling, the former differentiates itself by having new rules each time a new fall begins. This isn't just a chance to see who the better man is across multiple rounds. No, it's a chance for wrestlers to test their mettle in a variety of different circumstances. Take the first, and probably the most famous instance of this match type, for example, the one which pitted Stone Cold Steve Austin against Triple H at No Way Out in February of 2001. That one started off simply enough, with Fall 1 being a straight wrestling bout,
Yep.
but as Fall 2 started, the rules changed and things turned into a street fight. And then by the time Fall 3 began and both men were physically spent, the steel cage would be lowered down from the ceiling to lock everyone involved inside. Needless to say then, this was a very unique implementation of an old concept, and it was one which fans enjoyed, with this being the reason it would periodically be brought back over the years which followed. Not too much, however. No, as of 2025, there have only been 4 further examples of the 3 stages from Hell match taking place, all of which occurred in WWE. Triple H versus Shawn Michaels in December of 2002, Triple H versus Randy Orton in June of 2009, John Cena versus Ryback in June of 2013, and Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole in August of 2019.
So fucking crazy, bro. Crazy match.
Outside of that, many fans forget it exists. But then that's probably for the best, as it really should be something which is used extra sparingly, saved for either a huge blood feud, as was the case with the game and HBK back in the day, or for the climax to a huge storyline, as happened during the last one where Adam Cole finally reached the mountaintop and solidified himself as NXT champion. Yes, whenever we see this one be dusted off again, we want it to mean something.
For sure.
After all, that's how you keep a gimmick bout feeling special after so many years. Really, the next example of this taking place should be something major like a Cody Rhodes-Roman Reigns rematch, or maybe even Gunther and Seth Rollins over on Raw. Until that point, we have to be content enjoying the ones we've been given already over the years.
Classic
and
moment.
While we're doing this, we can always go back and enjoy some of the rare examples of our next entry being put on too, the often forgotten Boiler Room Brawl. Much like with the Buried Alive match, the idea was something first created as part of the feud between The Undertaker and Mankind in 1996. But while the Buried Alive match was very much positioned as the specialty of the Dead Man, the Boiler Room Brawl was sold to us as Mick Foley's domain instead. Largely because prior to this, he'd developed a habit of doing promos from the bowels of whatever building WWF was in that night. As to what the rules to this specialty encounter were, well, it was that the bout would start off in the boiler room and from there make its way throughout the arena, with the initial goal being to be the first one to get back to the ring. Needless to say then, Mrs. Foley's baby boy would walk out of that inaugural match the victor, not just because he got to the ring first, but because he also stole The Undertaker's manager Paul Bearer away from him. And the same thing would happen.
Man, we gotta put some respect. Now, I know a lot of people cherish this feud, but gotta really put some respect on one of the greater feuds in WWE history. Is easily Mankind and The Undertaker. They had a iconic feud with iconic matches that, you know, many people remember. So, you know, gotta put some respect on their name. One of the greater feuds in WWE.
Happened in the second Boiler Room Brawl too, with it being the Big Show who Mankind defeated that time. After that, however, the New Yorker would lose every subsequent showing, with those showings accounting for all the gimmick matches of this name to ever take place outside of the two which happened in WCW during 1999. Yes, it remains an incredibly rare match to see, one which, if truth be told, hasn't been on TV at all since December of 1999 at this point. Does that mean it's time for it to make a comeback? We'll just have to wait and see. But what about our next entry? Is it time for that one to make a comeback too? Well, let's find out now as we look at it in more detail. The Inferno match. Yes, this is another one connected to The Undertaker, as the Inferno match was first created in WWF in 1999 as part of the feud between the Phenom and his kayfabe brother Kane. And this match would only end when someone was set alight. Obviously then, this is a very dangerous match type and one which required a lot of real safety measures be put in place ahead of time, with this probably being why it's something so rarely seen. Hell, WWE's only ever used it 6 times in its history, and most of these have involved Kane as a participant.
I remember this one, bro. I remember watching this one live, bro. A MVP, you are the MVP for allowing yourself to get set on fire. Even though they had the protective stuff on him and, you know, the fire resistant stuff on him, but still, I remember watching this and I was like, holy shit, this is insanity.
With him usually coming out on the losing end. But with Kane being retired now, it seems highly unlikely they're ever going to do a showdown like this in the foreseeable future. So we'll all have to be content with going back and watching older versions of this
most likely won't do this
if we want to see them and the wildness that they could entail.
I can see AEW doing this for sure, but WWE, nah, I can't see them doing this.
Let's move away from fire and flames now and over to something altogether safer, though no less rare in wrestling, garbage. Why are we talking about garbage? Well, because the gimmick for our next entry is the dumpster match.
Dumpster match.
That's right, the dumpster match. Something we've all probably seen an example of at some point during the course of our wrestling fandom, even if it's something we don't see a lot of in general. And if for whatever reason you haven't seen one before and need an explanation of what it is, it's pretty much exactly as it sounds. There's a dumpster at ringside, and the ultimate goal is for a wrestler to beat down their opponent enough to the point that they can be thrown into this dumpster and have the lid be shut over the top of them. It's a variation on the casket match we talked about earlier. Unlike the casket match, however, the dumpster match was never strongly associated with any one particular performer, and this meant there's not been a huge call for it to be used over the years. Really, the only notable example of it happening might be the WWF Tag Team title bout between the New Age Outlaws and Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, which happened at WrestleMania 14. Of course, a large part of the reason this one remains so notable today, though, is because the build to it included that insane spot in which both of the babyfaces were thrown off the entrance ramp while locked inside a dumpster. A stunt that legitimately injured the Funkster when it happened, as there was no padding inside of there for him to cushion his landing. Outside of that, there are only 3 examples of the dumpster match on record. One between D-Generation X and the Dudley Boys at King of the Ring 2000. Another between Braun Strowman and Kalisto on an episode of Raw in 2017. And another still between Chelsea Green and Michin on an episode of SmackDown in 2024. Yes, this is certainly a fun match stipulation whenever it gets used, but we really can't see a way this happens on a regular kind of basis going forward. But what about our next subject? That being none other than the blindfold match. Come on now, out of all the gimmicks we've looked at today, the blindfold match might be one of the rarest of them all. And
it's just one of those things where, once again, it goes into that realm of, this is wrestling. Just roll with it. I've always thought this was just really nonsensical. And that's saying a lot, considering a lot of matches are legitimately nonsensical. But I think this one takes the cake because you can't see. Why are we having a match where I can't see you? But it's a thing. It's wrestling. That's all you can say. When someone asks you, what is this? You just say, it's just wrestling, bro.
The reason for that is because there's not actually that much you can do with it. No, it's very much a once you've seen it one time, you've seen everything you need to kind of bout. Hell, in the entire history of wrestling, there's only been 4 examples of it taking place in major promotions, 3 in WWE and 1 in TNA. As for the WWE ones, well, the best example of that probably remains the original, the meeting between Jake the Snake Roberts and the model Rick Martel at WrestleMania 8. There, the 2 men involved showed exactly why this one can be so fun, as it became a prime example of audience participation in the sense that Jake was able to get the crowd to help him find his opponent by pointing in various directions, full pantomime style. That said, for as much fun as this would have been for the live crowd, it's not an experience which is as easy to translate over to an audience watching at home.
Yeah.
And that's why the other 2 examples of the blindfold match in WWE have been spread out very sparingly, with Jamie Noble versus Nydia taking place at No Way Out 2004, and Triple H versus D'Lo Brown happened on an episode of Raw 2 years prior. Outside of that, this is it for WWE. No, if you want the only other example of such a gimmick, you have to look at the one which happened in TNA at Lockdown 2007. Of course, that is probably a prime example of why this gimmick isn't used anymore, though, as throughout the course of this disaster which took place between James Storm and Chris Harris, the blindfolds continually fell off each man mid-match, leaving the whole thing to turn into more of a parody than anything else by the time it was done. And as you would expect then, since this point, the gimmick has never appeared on television. No, like with so many of the other gimmicks we've looked at today, the blindfold match may be a thing of the past. And even if it's not, the chances are that whenever it is brought out in the future, it's going to continue to be a very rare occurrence.
Yeah, let's not bring that back. let's not bring that back. But hey, I want to ask y'all a question. Which match would you guys want to see brought back again? If they were listening to this video, if they weren't listening to this video, let me know down below which match you would love to see brought back in modern WWE or AEW. I'm telling you now, I can only expect sometime down the line, I can see AEW doing some form of an Inferno match. Because guess what? They go to the very extreme when it comes to their matches. So I'm willing to bet at some point they're going to do some type of Inferno related match. But I appreciate all love, support. road to 150K. Appreciate y'all kicking with me. See you on the next one. Peace.